Progress, blah, 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 blah. And then if I want to more and
We can do it. Okay. You know what? We're good. Let's just. Good morning. Do we have any motions in limine?
Couple pretrial matters, Your Honor.
Yes, go ahead.
May we introduce ourselves?
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Charles Stock for the plaintiff.
Good morning.
I'm joined by my co-counsel who can introduce themselves.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Sam Farnsworth, and I'm here with Max Fritsch, who will introduce himself. Good morning, Your Honor. I'm Max Fritsch.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm Theodore Chimani.
Good morning.
And given the nature of this competition, if our witnesses can introduce themselves.
Yes, they may.
Good morning. I'm Gabby Gray.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Emery Everhart.
Good morning. Right, any more other than introductions, motions in limine?
Couple. Plaintiff moves to invoke 603 and 615, constructive swearing in and sequestration of the witnesses.
Yes, that's granted.
I would also like to notice a piece of case law that is Chu v. Leak that says if the defense pursues an affirmative defense in this case, they take on a burden of proof, preponderance of the evidence. Finally, a stipulation.
Hold on one second. Okay, go ahead.
Stipulation 12 just states that Exhibit 1 is pre-admitted. We're going to be using Exhibit 1. With that, we're ready to go.
And defense, any motions in limine?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm here to start appearances.
Yes, Your Honor. All right. Yes, counsel. Wow.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Josiah Jones, and today I'm joined by my co-counsel, Mr. Noah Dickerson,
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Cormac McClay,
Good morning.
Good morning.
and Ms. Julia.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Together, we represent the defendant in this trial. We're also joined by two testifying witnesses today, Mr. Angel Ashmore
Morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
and Ms. Tempest Struck.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
And for those motions, Your Honor,
Yes.
first, we'd like to let Your Honor know that we will be raising that affirmative defense. It's an assumption of risk defense, so we will assume that burden. Counsel just talked to you about.
Okay.
And just to note on 615, we will not have a party representative today. Next, Your Honor, I'd like to let you know that one of those pretrial orders has also ruled that the two testifying experts in this trial are already satisfied under 702 with the opinions that are given in that. With those things, we're ready for opening statements.
All right, thank you. And my understanding is also for your sympathetic witnesses that 403 and relevance is not. Are all the parties in agreement on that and understanding of that?
That's exactly correct, Your Honor.
Yes, Your
Thank
Honor.
you. With that, does the plaintiff wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. The debris was dead. It's July 14th, 2020. Magician Maximilian is getting ready for a trick called the bullet catch. He lines up against the wall. And his assistant takes 10 paces away. She pulls out a gun. She thinks that inside the chamber, there are only blanks. She's right. But what she doesn't know is that inside the barrel, there's debris. Dirt and dust that's accumulated over time. So when she points downrange, she clicks off this. She aims right at that magician and she fires, sending that debris at bullet-like speeds downrange, turning it into a bullet itself. Maximilian dies as a result of that trip. The debris became deadly, and that's why we're here. This case is about firearm safety. The evidence will show that the defendant, Lambert Family Carnival, didn't properly clean their gun. And you're going to learn that when you don't clean your gun properly, debris can accumulate inside the gun, making any sort of firing of that gun, even if there are blanks inside, turn dead. That's why we're suing the defendant for recklessness. That means that as the plaintiff, we have a burden of proof. We have to show you it's more likely than not that the defendant owed a duty of care to Maximilian, that they breached that duty by recklessly disregarding any sort of safety risks, and that that breach was the direct and proximate cause of Maximilian's death. We're going to meet our burden by showing you three simple facts. First, the defendant promised to clean their gun. Second, the defendant never cleaned their gun. And third, because the defendant didn't properly clean their gun, Maximilian died. Let's walk through each of those together now. First, that the defendant promised to clean their firearm. We're going to call Maximilian's assistant, a woman named Gabby Gray, to the stand. She was the person who actually pulled that trigger. She's going to tell you the defendant promised her that they would make that trick safe, that they would clean their gun properly. You're going to learn the defendant broke that promise. And that brings us to fact number two, that the defendant didn't properly clean their gun. You're going to learn today what proper safety procedure looks like. You're going to learn what you're supposed to do is clean the inside barrel of a gun after every time you fire. You're going to learn the defendant didn't. And that brings us to fact number three, that because the defendant failed to properly clean their gun, that magician died. We're going to call an expert witness. Her name is Emory Everhart. She's a firearm safety expert. And she's going to tell you that when you don't actually clean the inside barrel, debris, dust, and dirt, frankly, gunk, can build up inside the barrel. So that when you pull the trigger, all of that explodes outwards, turning into a pseudo bullet. You're going to hear all of the evidence in this case is consistent with that happening on July 14, 2020. Throughout this trial, I want you to focus on the promises the defendant made and the promises he didn't keep. That's why at the end of trial, we'll ask you to find the defendant lying. Because their debris became deadly. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Does the defense wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
He loaded the gun, but she fired. Members of the jury, on the morning of July 14th, Angel Ashmore got out of bed. He went to work, and he began to clean the firearm for Mr. Maximilian. He removed it from a lockbox, thoroughly cleaned the barrel, loaded that weapon with blanks, and then test fired that weapon to ensure that that barrel was clean. See, opposing counsel got up here and he told you a long story about those weeks leading up, about what Angel Ashmore didn't do. What they didn't tell you is that the only thing that mattered were those seconds before that gun was fired. Because yes, he may have loaded that gun, but she pulled the trigger. By taking this case to trial, the plaintiff has taken on a burden. And though they want you to believe that the debris was deadly, I am certain that the evidence will not show you that today. You see, they have to show you that the Lampert family carnival owed a duty of care to Mr. Maximilian, that duty was breached, and that breach of duty was the direct and proximate cause of Mr. Maximilian's death. They have to prove it to you to be more likely than not. Members of the jury, even though we strongly believe they will not meet this burden today, you may find at the end of the evidence, you may agree with the plaintiff. You may think they did their job, but we have also taken on our own burden. You see, through the evidence today, we're going to prove to you that Mr. Maximilian understood the risks involved with the bullet catch act he performed on July 14th. For the counsel told you, you'll hear from Mr. Maximilian's assistant, Ms. Gabby Brett. When she takes the stand today, she's going to tell you about that act. She's going to tell you that she pointed that weapon directly at him, and she fired. First witness we're going to call is going to be Angel Ashmore, prop master for the Lambert family. Mr. Ashmore was the only person on that scene who responded to Max's injuries, the only person who tried to help. He'll also testify that on July 14th, he cleaned that. He thoroughly ensured the safety of the firearm used in that act, placed it backstage for Miss Brady to use, and the next time that weapon left a locked box, well, it was in her hand. He'll also testify that Max understood the dangers of that act. He'll tell you that on July 14th, it wasn't him holding that gun. Miss Ashmore, or Miss Gray. We also brought an expert for today's trial, Ms. Trapp. Ms. Trapp will take the stand and she'll explain to you the dangers involved with the bullet catch trick. She'll walk you through the steps that Max and his assistant should have taken in order to prevent any mishap. And members of the jury, we just ask you to listen to the testimony and we ask that you pay attention to all the evidence and that you remember that though he may have loaded that gun, she was the one who fired. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Your Honor, before we get started, permission to just rearrange co-counsel.
Yes, go ahead. Is everyone good?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Great. Would the plaintiff like to call their first witness?
Plaintiff calls Gabby Gray.
Gabby Gray. Ms. Gray, could you raise your right hand? You swear that the testimony that you are going to give today under penalty of perjury is the truth? Okay, thank you. You may begin.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Gabby Gray.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a performer, a magician.
What kind of magic do you do?
I do card tricks, explosive magic, escapes, a little bit of everything.
Holding up exhibit 1. Do you remember working with a magician named Maximilian?
I do. He was my mentor. We worked together for years. He was the lead and I was his assistant.
What's your relationship like with Max?
Really close. I mean, when you start spending every single waking moment with someone, it's hard not to just. We're family.
Great. What happened to Max on July 14th, 2023?
We were performing a trick. Something like that.
Let's talk about what went wrong. Ms. Gray, do you know who was responsible for making sure your acts would be safe?
We were hired by the Lampert Family Rental LLC. The owner, Mr. Lampert, had hired us for the summer.
How were things going that summer?
Started out great. I mean, we had a full house. People were really, excited, cheering, things like that. Over time, though, I noticed the audience start to dwindle.
When the audience dwindled, how did the defendant respond?
He looked stressed. I mean, one day he pulls us aside into his office and he starts talking to us about changing our act. He said, I'm willing to cut corners. I just need the act to be mine.
Did he say how he would make the act mind blowing?
Yeah. The bullet catch.
What's the bullet catch?
It's an illusion. The magician is supposed to catch a bullet in midair.
How does that work?
The magician's assistant holds out a gun, aims it at the magician. But instead of firing a real bullet, it's a blank cartridge. Nothing's supposed to come out. The bullet's in the magician's mouth the entire time.
How often would you and Max perform that trick?
Rarely ever. There's a lot that goes on with it. I mean, there's the angling, there's the right ammo, the right equipment. It was a lot.
So how did you react when the defendant picked bullet catch trick?
I asked if we could do something else.
Could you?
No, Mr. Lampert, he said he would sue us if we didn't go through.
If you couldn't change the trick, what did you do?
I wanted to make sure it would at least be safe, the right equipment for it. So I asked for a brand new gun.
When you asked the defendant for a brand new gun, did the defendant say yes?
Yes, he promised me. He promised we would get a new gun. We would have someone best in the industry taking care of it, maintaining it.
Let's talk about whether the defendant followed through on that promise. When you got that gun, how did it look?
It smelled like gunpowder.
Were you there to see where that gun was being stored?
Yes, it was being stored with the other props in the prop tent.
What were the conditions like?
Really dusty. Props were thrown about all over the place. It disorganized.
Ms. Gray, were you able to practice shooting that gun?
No. The blank cartridges, they didn't arrive in time. Just before a show. So
Were you worried that that trick wouldn't be safe?
of course I was worried. Of course I was worried. I asked them. I asked them if this would be safe, if Max would be safe. He said yes. He said the gun would be ready. They said it would be fine.
Let's talk about whether it was fun. On July 14th, how did your show with Max begin?
Started out great. It's a full house. People were laughing, cheering.
What happened when you got to the bullet catch trick?
We set up the scene. We have a bit. We start fighting. And I pull out the gun, start waving it around for the crowd to see.
What happened next?
I hold out the gun. I aim it at Max. Look him in the eye. I pull the trigger.
what happened when you pulled that trigger?
The second I pulled that trigger, he's on the ground. I mean, I remember all I could hear was that gunshot just ringing in my ear. I don't remember screams. I don't remember the chaos. I mean, I couldn't even move.
Can you remember?
Blood. There was so much blood. I saw his face. He didn't look like Max anymore.
Ms. Gray, why did you go through with pulling that trigger?
Because I was promised. I was promised that this would be okay. Every day, I think about my finger on that trigger. Of course I think about that. I think about his body on the floor. I did it because I trusted. Every day, I wish I had.
Nothing further.
Counsel, you may be seated. Does defense wish any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
I don't have your permission to use this little section of the table up here.
Yes, go ahead.
You proceed.
Yes.
Afternoon. And the truth is, now before that trick on July 14th of 2020, you were careless with the gun that killed Mr. Maximilian. Right?
That is not true.
Let's talk about that. Because, man, you'd agree that in addition to the defendant having some responsibilities in taking care of that gun, you had some responsibilities as a performer, right?
I was the person, aside from Angel Ashmore, to have the lockbox.
That's right, man. You and Max together decided that you would sometimes check the equipment.
I wouldn't say I checked the equipment like a prop master should. That was their job.
But you did do a check on the equipment on July 14th, right?
I saw it, the lockbox before the show.
You were inspecting things, making sure everything was safe, right?
I was looking at it in the prop tent, and then Angel Ashmore took it away.
Man, normally when you do that kind of check, you're thorough about it, right?
Sure.
You make sure to note if you see anything that looks wrong.
I do, yeah.
And the thing that you make sure to always do if you ever do a check is to tell Mr. Maximilian if you see anything that you don't think looks right.
I mean, I brought it up to him that day, but he said, it was their job. And he trusted because Mr. Lampert said so.
We'll get to that in just a moment, but that's yes to my question, right?
Yes.
But that day, when you did a check on July 14th, it was a little bit different for you, wouldn't you say?
Objection, Your Honor, pursuant to rule, 403 is not allowed.
You may
That-
proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. That day, when you did a check on July 14th, it was a little bit different for you, right?
Not sure.
Well, you were angry with Max that day, true?
I wouldn't say I was angry at Max that day.
You wouldn't say you were angry with Max. Let's talk about what happened a week before. Because you remember having an argument with him, right?
Yes, we had fought the week before.
Yeah, a screaming match, right?
That's true. Sounds silly now. I had proposed to him. He did very well when he said that.
And after that happened, you started talking about some things related to your performance, true?
I was so angry. I said things that I regret, that I don't mean. I said things.
What you said was, I've sacrificed everything just so you can be happy.
I said that.
You said, I'm done with you.
I was so mad. I said that I would move on. I would be my own magician. That it would be our last show together. I was so angry.
You said you were done with him, man?
I said that.
You said it should be Gabby the Great in the lights, not you.
I said that.
Man, you said that show on July 14th, that one's going to be our last.
I said that. And it kills me that we never fully resolved it before he passed away. That's how he remembers everything.
That's right, man. Before you went to do that check, you had never fully resolved that, right?
We had talked through it. It wasn't completely resolved. I mean, this was a big thing, a rejection, a marriage proposal. It wasn't fully resolved.
And you would say that you were still so angry that you were thinking about leaving the show.
I thought about it.
Man, the truth is that anger, it distracted you from doing your job on July 14th, right?
No.
Man, can you flip to Exhibit 4 in that binder for me? You recognize that as the gun that was used during that bullet catch trick, don't you?
Yes.
It's a fair and accurate copy of.
Yes.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibit 4.
Any objection?
No objections.
No objections. Exhibit 4 is permitted.
Man, you went into that prop tent to check on this gun, right?
Right. We hadn't received the blink cartridges yet. I was trying to follow up with it.
You physically held this gun in your hands.
That's right.
Man, when you were holding this gun, you made a mistake, didn't you?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Man, you remember when holding this gun, you smelled gunpowder for the first time, right?
That's right. I had smelled gunpowder.
And then we just talked about how normally, if you notice anything wrong, you tell Mr. Maximilian, right?
That's right. I brought it up to him.
On July 14th, you never told him that I smelled gunpowder on that gun you're about to use.
I told him that I was worried, especially with the blank cartridges not being there, and he said it would be fine because Mr. Lampert promised us it would be fine.
Not my question, man. You never told him I smelled gunpowder on that gun.
I did not say gunpowder specifically. I expressed my concerns.
I want to talk about whether Mr. Maximilian had some responsibilities with this trick. Because then you said something on direct examination. You told Mr. Scott that the defendant chose the bullet catch trick. You remember saying that?
That's right.
But man, the truth is that it was you and Max who decided to pitch that to Mr. Lampert, true?
Not exactly.
Man, the defendant asked you what kind of tricks are available, right?
That's right. We wrote throwing out ideas. It was a running list of tricks that we had available. We didn't propose the bullet catch trick.
Man, the truth is you and Max decided together that the way you would do that trick was to aim the gun at his head, right?
Pointed at him, it was realistic.
You didn't decide to have a target with you, right?
Sorry, what do you mean?
And then Max decided to do that trick, even with a gun pointing directly at him, right?
Because we were threatened that he would sue us if we didn't.
That's a yes.
Yes.
No further questions.
Redirect examination?
Yes. How much time do we have?
55 seconds.
Craig, would you ever want to hurt the man you tried to spend the rest of your life with?
No, I fought. We we were family. I mean, I never would have wanted to hurt him. To kill him, no.
Why did you agree to do this trick?
Mr. Lamb threatened us. He said if we didn't go through with it, we would sue, or he would sue. We couldn't afford that.
Opposing counsel asked about this gun in the prop tent. Were you the last person with this gun in the prop tent?
We passed that off to Angel Ashmore. That was his job to maintain.
If Angel Ashmore left debris in this gun, would you have known about it?
No, I would not have known.
Nothing further.
No recross for witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. Score after this round, or you score after the next one. We just have 1 second for, you guys want to score right now? For- And defense, do you have a witness?
We do, Your Honor. We call Mr. Angel Ashmore.
Okay. Mr. Ashmore, was it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear under penalty of perjury that everything you say today is going to be the truth?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Good morning, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Of course. Hi, how you doing? I'm Angel Ash.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Ashmore?
I'm a prop master, Lamford Carnival. It's not much, but it's honest work.
How'd you get into that line of work?
My family, we didn't have much money growing up. When I was younger, for my birthday, I asked my dad for a ticket to the carnival. Changed my life forever. I knew I wanted to be involved, but I'm not the best public speaker. So I got involved backstage.
So what is it that you actually do as a prop master?
I help the carnival performers with anything they need in their act, whether that be balls to juggle, costumes to wear, even firearms. I handle that too.
So then can you tell our jury why it is that you're here in court today?
Here. I helped prepare with the bullet catch trick. And I tried to save Max when he got shot.
So I want to get right into it and talk about what you did on July 14th of 2023.
Okay.
So what kind of steps did you take to make sure that this trick was safe?
I cleaned the gun, loaded a blank in it, and then I tested it to fire, make sure it would work.
Okay, we're going to take those 3 steps you just mentioned one at a time, starting with cleaning the gun. So we can't have a gun in the courtroom today, but do you think if I gave you something else, like a flashlight, you could explain to us what you did?
I'm not an engineer, but I could certainly try.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with that flashlight. Counsel has seen this already.
Yes, granted.
All right, so we're going to look at that, just a feel for it. And then I'm going to ask you if you can explain to us what kinds of steps you take to actually clean the gun.
It's pretty simple. Okay. So first things first, you gotta make sure there's no ammunition in this thing. So you disassemble it and you unload it. If there's anything in there, excuse me. Then afterwards, you take a swab or a tool, go inside the barrel, and you clean it real thorough.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness removed a battery from the flashlight and then used a swabbing motion with his finger inside the flashlight.
The record will so reflect.
Sir, what do you do, or excuse me, why do you have to clean that barrel?
Gotta make sure nothing's stuck in there, jammed. You don't want anything shooting out of there if you have a blank.
Okay, well, what do you do after you've disassembled and unloaded?
Then you load in that blank. You make sure it's a blank cartridge, you put it in.
What exactly do you mean when you say blank cartridge?
A blank is like a bullet. It just doesn't have the punch. You get the same flash and noise. There shouldn't be anything shooting out of it.
Sir, how sure are you that you put a blank into that gun?
I am 100% certain, sir. I triple checked that gun.
Okay, you said the third step that you take was to test fire. Did you get a chance to test the gun before that show?
Absolutely. I reassembled it. And I fired it a few times to make sure it worked.
Why'd you decide to test the gun?
This was going in someone's hands. This might have been pointed at someone. I needed to make sure that the right ammunition was in this thing.
Thank you, sir. You can put that flashlight to the side now. We've talked about the steps you took to prepare. I want to talk a little bit more about whether Max might have known some of the risks that came along with doing this trip. Did you ever talk with him about that?
Yeah, I did. When I found out he was doing the bullet catch trick, I was worried. So I went over to his trailer to talk to him.
What you talking?
I told him my concerns, that I was worried that this trick could be dangerous, that even if we prepared perfectly, things could still go wrong.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation. May I be heard?
Yes.
The witness just testified that this trick could be dangerous even if everything is done right. There's no foundation on the record as to how this witness would know the conditions in which this trick would be dangerous, whether it could be dangerous even if everything was done right. If I may proffer, yeah, the only training this witness has in firearm safety was one video he watched back in 2019 that he fast forward. That's not sufficient foundation to testify to the conditions that would be required to have this thing be dangerous.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, the foundation counsel's asking for is a generally known fact. Anything that involves a firearm can be dangerous. That's exactly what the witness is testifying to using his experience.
Response.
Yes.
The witness's testimony went further. He began to testify to conditions in which this would be dangerous. Even if we do everything right, it's still dangerous. That testimony is the problem because this isn't a gun expert. This isn't someone who's familiar working with firearms. And that foundation required for that conclusion, that opinion, it's not on the record and it won't be laid.
Oh, I've heard enough. I think I'm going to allow you to lay a little bit more foundation so we understand that a lay witness would be able to testify to that. And at that time, if you again believe that not enough foundation has been laid, you can renew your objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Ashmore, what kind of elements did this trick involve?
From what I understood, he'd be pointing a real live gun at someone.
Is that the danger that you expressed to Mr. Maximilian?
Yes, that's what I was talking to you about earlier. Cleaning the gun, it's a firearm, a gun, sir. A lot could go wrong. I told him that.
So how do you respond when you talk to him about the danger of firing a gun?
He didn't address what I was saying. He just tried to move on.
Did you stop trying to convince him?
No, I told him I could call the owner. I could try and change his mind. We could do something. This isn't a joke.
I want to talk about what happened during that trip on July 14th of 2020. Where were you?
Couldn't forget. I was backstage, managing the props, trying to make sure everything was going smoothly.
Was everything going smoothly?
First, then I heard that gunshot. It sounded like all hell broke loose. There were screams I had never heard in my life. So I ran out immediately. I knew something was wrong.
What did you see when you ran out to the stage?
I don't know if I can even fully describe it, sir. It was like something out of a horror movie. People were screaming and running all over the place, and in the middle of that stage was Max. Full of blood.
What did you do when you saw Max?
I ran over. My mind, my legs were working quicker than my mind. I went over. I took off my vest. I tied it up. I tried to stop the bleeding. I didn't even know where it was coming from. There was so much. I just kept pushing. Pushing. It wasn't working.
What happened after you tried to stop them?
I didn't know what to do. I stood there like an idiot. But then I felt something on me. It was Max. He touched me. It looked like he was trying to talk to me. So I leaned in. I wanted to see what he was trying to do.
Did you hear if he said anything to you?
Voice was weak, but I won't forget what he said. He looked me right in my eyes. And he said, I wish I would have never done this trick.
Thank you for your time today, Mr. Ashman. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, counsel. Cross-examination,
Yes, Your Honor.
you may proceed.
Your Honor, just grab the flashlight.
Yes.
Keep the flash. Actually, if I could have it, I'd use it during cross-examination. Actually,
Yes.
start by talking about whether Max's gun was safe. If you could just turn to exhibit 3 in that binder there.
Okay.
Appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, sir. Exhibit 3.
You recognize this to be the expense request form you submitted for Max's gun.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah.
Doesn't
I
look
did.
to be changed since you submitted it.
No, this was for the gun and the blanks.
Plaintiff offers exhibit 3.
Without objection, Your Honor.
Without objection, exhibit 3 is admitted.
You submitted 3 options for Max's gun.
That's right.
The best option, brand new.
That was the high-end price option.
The worst option, heavily used.
Yeah, you can see right here on the form, there were 3 options. The high, midpoint, low end. I talked about what the conditions for each one would be.
Says Max prefers brand new.
That's right. Kind of alone, he's the one who makes the decision on this. I gave him the options.
Right. You told your boss Max prefers brand new.
That's why I put right here. Yeah,
Boss didn't pick brand.
no, it says on here, he approved the low end for the gun and midpoint, the bullets.
Pick the cheapest option possible.
On here, that's right.
He said the cheaper, the better.
In general, yeah, we do it. Get to a budget for the kind of,
That's a yes.
that's right.
Let's talk about whether you were qualified to maintain that gun.
Okay,
Because so before that trick, you did not have experience with firearms.
before that trick, I had undergone a short training.
You never owned a gun.
No, not myself. I don't care.
You felt nervous just touching guns.
Absolutely,
That training you mentioned, it was all the way back in 2019.
that's right.
And you fast forwarded through the whole thing when you watched, didn't you, sir?
Yeah, that's right. They were talking a little slow.
When you heard this would be a bullet patch trick, your heart sunk.
Absolutely. I knew you'd be pointing a gun at something.
Let's talk about whether that caused you to make mistakes. You'd agree your job was to check that gun daily.
Absolutely, as much as I could.
That job fell on the back burner for you.
Have to be more specific.
You got distracted
What time?
all throughout the time when you were supposed to be checking it, sir. You'd say you got distracted.
But earlier up to the trick, I had a lot on my plate. There's a lot to juggle with the props.
You'd say you got stretched thin.
I was, yeah. The only prop master at the time.
Felt like you were running in 100 different directions.
That's right. I love what I do, but it was a busy time.
Sir, you didn't check that gun once until the afternoon of Max's trick.
wouldn't say I checked it. I'm the one who purchased it. I put it in a lockbox. I wouldn't say that.
Sir, I'm asking about the checks of that gun. You yourself would say you didn't check it once until the afternoon of Max's trip.
I didn't do a full inspection or anything like
A
that.
check of any kind,
I bought the gun, sir.
but you didn't check it until the day of Max's trip. Yes or no?
I don't believe it, sir.
Let's talk about whether you made a critical mistake during that one check you did,
Okay?
because you talked us through that check using this flashlight here, sir, didn't you?
Yeah, I tried to do my best.
Let's talk through it again. You said step one was that you thoroughly cleaned the gun. Did I do that right?
Yeah, you have to make sure you get it in all the crevices.
Sir, you didn't clean it thoroughly. You admit you cleaned it quickly.
That's not true.
Is it your testimony that you do not admit that you did a quick clean of that gun?
I had to do it quickly after. Gabby, right? She had the gun in her hands before. I didn't know what she was doing. I grabbed it quickly from her hands and cleaned it quickly thereafter.
So that's a yes. Quickly, not quickly.
I did it soon after, but I always clean it thoroughly.
Then you say you test fired that gun. You actually shot.
No, you have to unload it, make sure there's nothing in there, then put in blank bullets. Make sure you got the right bullets in there.
So step two, you test fired it, you shot.
Yes, absolutely.
Then you loaded it with the blank for the performance.
That's correct. Yes.
Then you locked it away, ready for the end.
Reassemble it, make sure it's all good. Yeah, put it in the lockbox.
So in between, when you test fired that gun and when you loaded it for the performance, you did not clean that gun.
No, sir, I cleaned it before.
So any debris left over from that test shot, you wouldn't have cleaned.
Objection, Your Honor, assuming a fact on
What fact?
that there was,
Proper what fact?
yes, Your Honor, within the question, counsel asserted there was any debris within that gun, you wouldn't have cleaned it. That's a fact. We don't have an evidence that there was debris in the gun after that test fire.
Response?
I said if there was any debris, he wouldn't have cleaned it. He didn't clean it after test firing.
Okay. Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
If there was any debris left over from that test shot, you would not have cleaned it.
I'm not aware of any, but no, that's right.
You're aware you used gunpowder during that test shot.
It's a blank, so yeah.
The gunpowder left over from a test shot, you wouldn't have cleaned that.
I'm not sure there's gunpowder that goes in the barrel from a blank, so
You wouldn't know. You didn't clean it.
it's not how I understand firearms work, but I didn't look at that. No, sir.
Did not clean Max's gun after firing.
No, sir, like I said, I cleaned it before.
Talk about whether you were honest with Max.
Okay.
Max asked you, can I practice shooting that gun?
Absolutely.
Max
Yes.
asked you, do you have the ammo? Can I use it?
That's right. I think this is around July 12th.
You admit you lied to Max.
That's right. He told me he wanted to, he had some blank stock. I wasn't comfortable giving him that gun yet. I said we need more time. It wasn't ready.
So you admit you lied about that ammo.
Yes, sir. I wanted more time to make sure that gun was safe.
So you lied to your performer about the trick that killed him.
Shouldn't have, but did. I wanted to make sure that gun was good, so
That's a yes.
yes.
Nothing further.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
And how much time do we have left?
Got a minute and 13 seconds.
Can I proceed?
Yes.
Mr. Ashmore, Mr. Stock asked you some questions about cleaning the gun thoroughly versus quickly. Did you clean the gun thoroughly?
I always clean thoroughly.
Then he asked you about whether or not you lied to Mr. Maximilian. So why did you feel like you needed a little bit more time with the gun?
Like I told you earlier, from the second I heard bullet catch trigger, I didn't want to take any chances. I needed more time with the gun. I told him something I shouldn't.
Thank you for your time today, sir. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time. Barring any recross and with your permission, the witness can step in.
Okay. you may step down, sir.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, as the people are filling out things, permission to rearrange the courtroom for the next segment of trial.
Yes, go for it. We need a little bit. You guys can take like a 2-minute break while we fill out our questionnaires.
Okay. Corey.
You guys all good? We have everyone back.
Yes, sir.
Are we ready to proceed with the next witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Emery Everhart to the stand.
Ms. Everhart, will you please raise your right hand? Sorry, I haven't had all my coffee. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. You may begin. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
Of course. Good morning to both of you. My name is Emery Everhart.
What do you do for a living, Ms. Everhart?
I'm a professional firearm safety specialist. So I teach gun safety classes in our community. In addition to that, I have my own consulting firm. I do forensic consulting for businesses that want to know how to put firearms safely into practice within their various environments.
Did you go to school for all that?
Of course. I received my bachelor's in criminal justice from Georgia State. I then got my master's in education from the University of Georgia. After that, I actually served my community for 8 years as a police officer with the Butler County Sheriff's Department. When I retired from active duty, I spent 4 years as the firearm safety specialist, instructing new classes of officers.
Why'd you stop being a police officer?
I stepped away from that job after a personal tragedy. My younger brother was killed on a film set. A firearm. Guns are ubiquitous in our lives. It's important that I share my knowledge with other people so that we can prevent accidents like that from happening again. I feel like in some way, doing what I do, I'm doing evidence and justice.
Then, ma'am, I want to talk about how you got involved with this case. How did that happen?
I was retained by the plaintiff to do a full safety inspection and review of the practices that led up to the fatal shooting on July 14th, 2020.
And how do you conduct that safety review?
It's very simple. I review the evidence of all practices that implicate firearm safety, and then I just compare those to what best practices would be. That's how we all do it. It's the gold standard in my field.
And what sort of materials do you need to do that review?
In this case, I relied on the report of the carnival's armor and the magician's assistant. In addition to that, I had access to exhibits 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8.
Were you able to review the physical gun in this case?
No, unfortunately, I was not. The armor, he happened to lose the gun in the confusion that happened after the accident.
Well, were the materials you were able to review sufficient?
They were more than sufficient. Of course, I would have liked to review the gun. I always do, but it wasn't necessary to come to a complete conclusion.
And did you reliably apply your method to those materials?
I always do.
Okay, well then what conclusion were you able to come to?
My ultimate conclusion is that
I'm sorry, are you admitting her as an expert at the time?
Yes, Your Honor. In this jurisdiction, we don't have to actively tender them as an expert. We just have to lay the foundation.
You in agreement with that?
Yes, Your Honor, for that free trial.
Okay, you may proceed.
Of course. What conclusion did you come to?
in this case, I concluded that the most likely cause, in my opinion, of Mr. Maximilian's death would have been a misfiring blank in the gun. I thought that that was most likely due to failure to properly clean and maintain the gun on the part of the defendant, the Lambert family.
Let's break that down starting at the beginning. What is a blank?
It's a good question. So when we say fire a blank, what we're talking about is a blank cartridge. It's got a shell casing, which is usually crimped at the nose in the case of a blank, and it's got gunpowder inside of it, but it doesn't have an actual bullet. So when you aim your firearm and pull the trigger, there's a flash and a bang, but no projectile actually shoots out. That's why it's often used in performances. It looks and sounds realistic, but there's supposed to be nothing actually coming out of the muzzle.
Well, how can a blank malfunction?
Actually, quite a lot of ways. I would say in my experience, the most common would be if there's a jam, something stuck in the barrel, or behind that, if who's responsible for the gun fails to properly clean the inside of it, dust and debris can build up and become sort of a pseudo bullet. That would be the next most common way.
Well, how can failing to clean out debris make a gun dangerous?
Well, I could tell you, but it might be easier to just go ahead and show you. Would you mind if I step down and showed you the demonstration we talked about?
Your Honor, permission for Ms. Everhart to step down.
Permission granted.
Just approaching with the materials. Okay, Ms. Everhart, what are we looking at here?
Not much, just a blank piece of paper and some string. I often use this demonstration. It's very rudimentary, but easy to put together. I use it in my classes to demonstrate its concepts. So this here is going to represent the barrel of a clean gun. As you can see, there's nothing inside.
Okay, what happens when you fire a blank from a clean gun like that?
Well, what you have to remember is there's no projectile, but there's still force coming from the gunpowder. So if I just represent that by blowing into it, nothing comes out. That's the idea of a blank.
Okay, well, what about when a gun is dirty on the inside?
This string, this will represent dust, debris, little particles, sand, lint from your pocket if you don't keep your gun in a holster. Just put that in the barrel there. Now, in this case, there's that explosive force of the gunpowder. When you shoot, some good firearm safety here, I'm not going to point it at you. That all comes rocketing out.
Can that be dangerous? Isn't it just dirt?
It may just be dirt, but what you have to remember here is then when you eject a projectile from a gun, You're firing it at the speed of a bullet. So even very small projectiles can be extremely dangerous at those speeds, especially close.
Thank you, ma'am. You can retake your seat. Well, if that's how debris can be deadly, I want to talk about how we can prevent that. How can you do that?
I would say what I typically recommend falls in two areas: proper storage and proper cleaning and maintenance.
Let's break that down, starting with the storage. Where should you store a gun?
Well, there's a lot of considerations that go into that. But if our aim is to keep the gun clean, we should store it in a clean environment, away from dust, debris. I mean, again, an area being dusty might not sound like a big deal, but remember our demonstration. Dust can be very dangerous.
Was the gun in this case stored in a clean environment?
It was not. According to the statement of the magician's assistant, it was stored in a tent that was extremely dusty. That can cause dust accumulation.
Objection, Your Honor, to misleading. Have you heard?
Yes.
We actually heard from Mr. Ashmore earlier today, and he testified that it was inside of a lockbox, inside of that prop tent, of course. But for her to go up here and say that it was just inside of a tent filled with dirt and debris, that substantially is more misleading than it's probably not.
Response?
Your Honor, what we heard is that lockbox is inside that tent, and that Mr. Ashmore took that gun outside of that lockbox within that dirty tent. That's exactly what she's testified to. That gun was used in that dirty tent.
Okay, let's try.
Sure, refer.
Yeah, she didn't mention that it was inside of a lockbox. For the sake of the jury to understand clearly, just that slight difference is okay. So we have no problem with it being inside of that tent. It just also was inside of a lockbox.
So if I'm understanding, your objection is that she is categorizing it within a lockbox, or that she's not?
She didn't say the words lockbox. She said it was inside of a tent that was filled with dirt and debris. And we heard that it was inside of a lockbox. If she would just say a lockbox inside of that, we'd have no problem.
Okay, I'm gonna, so it sounds like the lockbox was within the tent, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So her understanding of the testimony, she, as an expert, I think she can verify, so your objection is overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, I'm just gonna re-ask you, where was that gun stored?
It was stored in a prop tent that, from eyewitness testimony, we know was typically pretty dirty and dusty.
Then let's talk about cleaning. What are the rules for cleaning a gun?
A weapon absolutely must be cleaned after every time it's fired. And then when you put it away and take it out to use it for another session, you should clean it at the beginning of that too. That's absolutely necessary, especially for prop weapons that aren't intended to have real bullets fired.
Was the gun in this case cleaned after every firing?
It was not. Not only is there a lack of discussion on the armor's part of properly inspecting it after firing it, he himself reports in his sworn statement that on the day of Mr. Maximilian's performance, he test fired the gun and then did not clean it afterwards.
And whose job was it to clean that gun?
The job of cleaning a gun, as well as everything to do with firearm safety, falls on the licensed armor of whichever business is utilizing firearms in their performance.
And who was that in this case?
His name is Angel Ashmore.
So then, ma'am, based on everything you reviewed, what was your final conclusion?
I concluded that in this case, the most likely cause of Mr. Maximilian's death was particles and debris from a misfired blank due to failure to properly clean and maintain that firearm.
Thank you. Nothing further on.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Good morning.
I'd like to start by talking about how you came to your conclusion in today's case, okay?
Of course.
You'd agree that when working with firearms in the entertainment industry, it's crucial to have somebody on set who's trained to use firearms, right?
Precisely. That's the armorer's duty.
You know that at the LFC, well, they had someone on payroll who was trained to use firearms, right?
Yes, they combine the role of prop master and armor. I don't always recommend that, but if you're on a budget, some productions do.
Directing back to my question, you know, they had someone on payroll who was trained to use firearms.
Absolutely.
That person, their name is Angel Ashmore, right?
That's his name.
You know that through his training course, he was taught how to properly handle firearms, right?
I believe he took a video training course. That's what he said.
That's a yes. That he was trained how to properly use firearms.
I believe so. He should have been.
Through his course, he was trained how to properly clean firearms, right?
That's my understanding.
Through that course, he was taught how to properly store firearms.
Yes.
You also know that he spoke to Max the magician about that trick, the bullet catch trick, right?
That's what he says.
He said that he told Max that that trick was dangerous, right?
That's what he reports, yes.
You know, on July 14th of last year, Max went through with that trick. Anyway,
Of course. The responsibility for maintaining safety and trick-settable firearms falls on the armorer. The performer's responsibility is to listen to the armorer's instructions, always,
so that's a yes. He performed that trick last year.
unfortunately.
Despite knowing all this, you decided to start your own investigation into what happened, right?
I was contracted by the plaintiff.
Take a look at that investigation. Step number one, you like to look at the gun that was used, right?
I would have loved to do that, yes.
Today's case, you can find it, right?
Oh, it's not that I couldn't find the gun. The gun was lost by the armorer following the performance, unfortunately.
Ma'am, I want to paint a picture for the jury. The last time that gun was seen, it was on the ground right next to Gabby Gray, right?
That's what appears to be the case.
Miss Gray, she was Max's assistant, right?
That's my understanding of the fact.
Miss Gray, she recently had her heart broken by Mr. Max.
I believe that I read that he rejected her proposal.
Just a couple of days before that show.
I recall.
Was last seen next to her, hadn't been seen since, right?
That's my understanding.
You know that she was the last person holding that gun?
That's my understanding as well.
You know that she was the one who pulled the trigger of that gun?
Yes, my understanding is that she was the one who pointed it and fired.
In a situation like this, you'd always prefer to be able to look at that gun yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Can't do that in today's case. So let's move on to the second step. You look at that coroner's report, right?
I did read the coroner's report in this case. That's absolutely true.
Coroner's report wasn't very helpful, was it?
I would say that it was helpful, just in that it reported that it was either a bullet or a misfired blank that caused Mr. Maximilian's death from it.
Right. Couldn't definitively say that it was a bullet, right?
It couldn't definitively say one way or the other. That's right.
But you believe that it was one of those two options, right?
That's what the reporting means.
Let's take them one at a time. Let's start with that bullet possibility. All the documents you reviewed in today's case, none of them suggested that any employee of the LFC had ever put a bullet in that gun, right?
To my knowledge, no, the gun was never loaded with live ammunition. If it was, I mean, that's a whole nother ballgame.
And from that coroner's report, there was no bullet found in Mr. Maximilian's head, right?
There was not.
So you don't think it's very likely that it was a bullet?
No, I don't think that a bullet is likely. That's exactly my conclusion. I think a misfired blank is what killed him.
Right, let's move to that one. You know that misfired blanks, they can happen if there's dirt or debris around, right?
That's one of the most likely causes.
You also agree that if that were to happen, it's likely that you'd be able to tell from the outside of the gun, right?
If you're familiar with guns and you had a second to look at it, you likely would.
All right, let's turn to that gun. If you don't mind opening that binder, go into exhibit number 4. If you would like to do the same, feel free. Now this gun here, this is the gun that was used by Max, right?
Yes, sir. This is a Glock 22. It's a common prop weapon. It's also a common service weapon for police officers.
Right, this gun, or this picture of this gun, it was taken before Mr. Maximilian passed away, right?
I believe so.
If you look at the back here, you can see some scuff marks, right?
Yes, it's my understanding that this gun was purchased heavily used.
Right, you can tell from the bottom here that it's a used gun, right?
It was.
You agree that anybody with experience with firearms would likely be able to recognize if a gun was dirty, and that could be a problem.
Yes, if they had time to look it over, they, I think, likely would be able to tell.
Like Max,
Yes, I believe so.
like Gabby.
I'm not quite sure of her experience with firearms. I don't know if she handles them in her like, daily life.
Well, ma'am, you've read Gabby Gray's report, right, her affidavit.
Right.
You know that she's performed this trick before.
I believe she said 7 times over a number of years. That's my understanding.
So that's a yes, she's used firearms before.
She has used firearms. That's correct.
Despite all this, it's your conclusion today that it's likely that if the LFC had followed safety protocol, then Max wouldn't be dead at all, right?
That's absolutely true. The armorer did not clean the gun after test fire.
It's a pretty strong conclusion, right?
I think that's likely, yes.
Let's talk about why you might be saying that. As you mentioned several years ago, your younger brother he passed away from firearms. On an entertainment set, right?
So I film set. Exactly.
That case, the corporation was responsible. It didn't clean the gun properly.
Yes, that's correct.
That event, it changed.
Losing my younger brother, yes, that changed.
It makes you think that there needs to be changes in the way that firearm safety works here.
Yes, I've always been a passionate advocate for firearm education. I think everyone should have information about best use accessible.
Your belief that if the LFC is not liable today, There could be some of that change that you're looking for, right?
I believe that's possible.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you.
Can you read that?
No redirect, Your Honor. We just asked that Ms. Everhart be allowed to step down,
You may step down, Ms. Everhart.
and we'll just be grabbing her demonstrative materials. Thank you, Ms. Everhart.
Does the defense have an expert witness they'd like to call?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Tempest Trap.
Say Trap.
That's correct.
Ms. Trap, please approach the bench. Ms. Trap, would you raise your right hand?
Yes, sir.
Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are going to give today is the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Would you please introduce yourself to the court?
Hi, my name's Tempest Trap.
Ms. Trap, why don't you tell us what you do for a living?
Most of the time, I'm working in consulting. I work in trick implementation and design for magicians.
What's involved in working in consulting and magic?
A lot more goes into magic tricks than you might think. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into these acts, and it really takes a village to put these on.
Is consulting your only line of work, man?
When I'm not doing that, I'm working with the University of Exeter on the development of their master's program in magic and occult sciences. And I'm also teaching courses on intermediate magic.
How'd you wind up getting into magic in the first place?
Like any kid, I thought I wanted to be a magician. But like Hollywood, that takes a certain X factor that not all of us are born with. What I was born with, though, is a dedication and a love for the craft. And that made me a great fit for behind the scenes. So right out of high school, I got a job in management and trick design.
How'd you turn that job straight out of high school into this career in consulting?
The practical experience in design certainly came in handy, but I needed some more certifications to be taken seriously. So I went back to school. I went to Emory. I got my bachelor's in history with a focus in magic for the ages. And then I did my master's in anthropology at Case Western, where I wrote my thesis on modern day magic and safety measures in modern day magic.
Ma'am, I'd like to turn to the case at hand. Are you familiar with the Langford family conflict?
I am. I was contacted by them to review the bullet catch trick that went wrong in one of their shows.
You familiar with a person named Max?
Yes, he was the magician who performed the trick and unfortunately passed as a result.
You're conducting an investigation like this. What do you do?
So you want to look at the safety measures that were implemented and planned with the trick in question. And you want to compare those to similar implementations of the trick throughout recent history. If you look at those side by side, it's easier to figure out what went wrong.
Is that a standard method in your field?
Of course, it's standard with consulting safety review.
Did you review any materials in your investigation?
I did. I reviewed the witness statement of the armorer, the person responsible for maintaining that weapon, as well as the person who shot the weapon, Max's assistant, Gavin Gray. And of course, I reviewed the expert report of Emory Everhart.
Were those materials, are they sufficient to reach any kind of conclusion?
Yes.
Well, how'd you begin your investigation? Let's start there.
So I began by considering the possibilities that I needed to determine to figure out why this went wrong.
What were those possibilities?
First, I wanted to look to see if the carnival's gun maintenance could have contributed to the accident. And then I wanted to see whether the magician's actions could have contributed. And then I wanted to figure out whether or not the trick could have gone wrong, even in ideal circumstances.
Take those one at a time, if you don't mind. Start with that first possibility. The carnival's gun maintenance could have contributed. How'd you investigate that?
I reviewed the witness statement of that armorer. I wanted to see if he was certified to handle guns. And I wanted to look at what the preparation of that gun looked like in the weeks leading up to that accident.
Did the armorer have any training related to firearm safety?
Yes, certified through the National Carnival Association. The certification involved training in regards to cleaning, how to properly store ammunition, and how to safely store your weapon.
Did you find any evidence that those measures that you just mentioned were used with the gun in this trick?
Yes, in regards to cleaning, the gun was cleaned once upon purchase and again in the hours leading up to the show. The gun was kept well in a lockbox, it was stored safely, and it was test fired and loaded with blanks.
Let's move to that second option then. Were there any actions by the magician might have contributed to the accident? What do you find?
Anytime a magician is performing a trick like this, they should know the inherent risks of the trick and how to minimize those risks. Because it's important to keep your safety in your own hands rather than relying on somebody else.
How do magicians minimize these risks in this trick?
They double check everybody's work. They make sure that the gun has been cleaned thoroughly, that it's been disassembled, and that it's been kept well away from live ammunition.
And did you find any evidence that Max, the magician, took any of those measures you just mentioned?
No, I didn't.
Move to that third option then. Whether the trick could go wrong even under ideal circumstances. What's the story? What did you find?
Sir, some responsibility, of course, has to rest with the magician that's performing this trick. They should be aware that this trick can go wrong.
Are there any inherent risks with a trick like the bullet catch trick?
Yeah. Debris is a huge concern. Even if the gun is thoroughly clean, there could still be debris in that weapon. And the gun can also malfunction through no fault of that carnival.
Is there anything that can be done to minimize those risks that you just mentioned?
It is magic after all. So through the use of misdirection, this trick could be made safer. If I could get down and show you.
Absolutely. Your Honor, permission for the witness to step down.
Yes, granted.
All right, Ms. Graff, feel free to explain.
Sure. Well, first, I want to take a look at this set of blocks that I brought. If you're looking at right here, you might think that it's 4 blocks tall and 2 blocks wide. If you change your perspective just a little bit, you'll see that that's not the case. That there's actually a whole support system going on back here. The positioning of this object creates an illusion for the audience through the use of forced perspective.
Ma'am, what does forced perspective have to do with the bullet catch trick?
I could actually ask Mr. Dickerson for his help as well.
Sure. Your Honor, permission for Mr. Dickerson to enter the law.
Yes, granted.
Mr. McClay, if you could stand right here.
Sure thing.
And Mr. Dickerson, if you could stand right here.
All right.
Mr. Dickerson, if you could point your hand just like this.
Ready?
Yes. Now, it might look like to the members of the jury that Mr. Dickerson is pointing his hand straight at Mr. McClay.
What do you mean that it might look like?
If you actually follow the trajectory of Mr. Dickerson's hand, you'll see that it actually goes right over Mr. McClay's right shoulder.
What does that have to do with the case that we're talking about today?
That use of misdirection could have minimized risks. If there was debris in that gun, that debris may not have hit Max straight on, had that weapon been positioned over his shoulder rather than at him.
Well, ma'am, did Max's assistant point that gun at Max's head on July 14th?
She did.
Thank you. You may retake your seat. Thank you, Mr. Dickerson. Now, Ms. Trout, what was your final conclusion in today's case?
That this trick, it could have gone wrong through no fault of the carnival, through the inherent risks of the trick itself.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, this is yours.
Good afternoon, Ms. Trapp.
Good afternoon, Mr. Farnsworth. It's been a while.
It has been. I want to begin by talking about why you're here. Because, ma'am, you didn't tell the jury that you have a financial stake in this case, don't you?
You're gonna have to be a little more specific, sir.
Let's be specific. Because you said on direct examination, growing up, you didn't really have that X factor to be a magician, right?
Right. You know, I didn't have the charisma that somebody like Max has. I was better off behind the scenes.
But ma'am, you do hope you have that X factor to be an expert witness, right?
Of course.
This
Of
is-
course I do. This is more my niche.
This is your first time being an expert witness, true?
It is. This is the first opportunity that I've had to put this knowledge to use in a courtroom.
But ma'am, you really want to do it more, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, if I can be informative to a wider group of people, I would jump at that opportunity.
In this case, it's kind of like the job interview for you, isn't it?
What do you mean, sir?
Well, you see this handsome, grizzled man recording you with an iPad, right?
Right over there. I see him.
You hear Mr. Cameraman back there taking photos of you, true?
That's right. I see him right back there.
You know potential clients are watching this case, right?
I certainly hope so.
You know,
I put in thorough work and I'd love to show that off.
man, when you say you hope so, you actually know so, don't you?
I know that some people will be watching this testimony. I don't know if they're watching it live right now, but they might watch it after the That's right.
You know, some people, being potential clients, are going to evaluate your testimony, true?
That's true. It was certainly a push to do the best, most thorough work that I could.
Ma'am, you've been promised more work if your testimony helps the defense, true?
Exactly.
You've been promised more work if the defense is found not liable, true?
That's true. You know, this was a big motivation for me to be thorough in this investigation. I wanted to make sure that I was putting my best foot forward.
Ma'am, you'd agree that work would be instrumental for your career, wouldn't it?
It would. It certainly would.
And ma'am, it's no coincidence. This is case number 1 for you, is it?
I don't know what you mean.
You actually knew Maximilian personally, right?
Yes, sir, I did. We grew up together.
You used to work together, right?
Yes, sir. I worked alongside Max for a few years.
You didn't like Maximilian very much, did you?
When we were working together, we were actually quite close. Things did change.
When you say things did change, ma'am, you thought Maximilian stole one of your tricks, right?
I didn't think so, sir. I know so. Max was always one to cut corners.
Ma'am, it seems like it still bothers you, does it?
I'd say that it does. You know, he ran my name through the mud with this.
You're
Yes, sir.
still angry at the plaintiff in this case, right?
You know, for that personal event, I'd say that I am.
You blame him for almost being excommunicated from the magic community, true?
Yeah. To prove that that trick was mine, I had to break the magician's code. I had to show the underlying designs of that trick, and all my boss saw was that I was ruining an illusion that the crowd loved.
Ma'am, it took you years to rebuild your reputation, right?
Absolutely, it did.
And now, ma'am, you're testifying as an expert against that magician. Is that correct?
Objection to misleading, Your Honor.
I'll withdraw the question, and I have nothing further.
The question's withdrawn. The jury should disregard that last question. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, at this time, done with this draft, we also rest our case.
Okay, great. You may step down, Ms. Trapp.
Thank you.
I don't think we're doing mid-trial motions, right?
That's
That's that.
No clue.
It's real trials.